Hi girls, today we will start with a new lesson. This is from the book Resonance. This is chapter 1 Indigo by Louis Fisher. Now this chapter is very important because it deals with a very important event in the life of Mahatma Gandhi, and it's a very important historical event in the history of India. Now Louis Fisher, the writer of this chapter, was an American journalist who came to India in the year 1942. He came to India to interview Gandhi, and he ended up writing the biography on the life of Mahatma Gandhi. Now, out of the whole book, this particular chapter, Indigo, is very important because it was the incident that happened in the place called Champaran that changed the outlook of Gandhi. Now, this Champaran episode is also known as a turning point in Gandhi's life. This incident was so important in the life of Gandhi because it became a reason for Gandhi to urge the departure of the Britishers in 1917. Now, the Champaran episode, it began as an attempt of Mahatma Gandhi to help the poor peasants, the poor farmers, or the poor sharecroppers in Champaran, but it ultimately proved to be a turning point in Gandhi's life because it was Gandhi's loud proclamation that made the British realize that Gandhi could not be ordered about in his own country. Now, what happened here? We will go in detail. Now, let's start first with this man, Raj Kumar Shukla. Now, he's very important because it was this man who went to meet Gandhi, and it was on his request that Gandhi went to Champaran. Now, Gandhi was in Lucknow in the year 1916. He was in Lucknow. He was there to attend an annual meeting of the Indian National Congress. And it was there that he met this man, Raj Kumar Shukla. Now, Raj Kumar Shukla was just like any other poor peasant, poor farmer from Champaran. He was poor. He from his clothes, it seemed very clear that he was poor. He was wearing ragged clothes. And then on top of that, he seemed emaciated. It showed very clearly that this man was suffering from starvation, and it showed clearly that it was not just him who was suffering, but it was all of these poor farmers or the poor sharecroppers in Champaran who were suffering under the rule of the British landlords in Champaran. Now, so what happened was Gandhi was too busy at that time, so he told Raj Kumar Shukla, I cannot promise you a date. Now, this man, since he's come all the way to Lucknow to meet Gandhi, and he did not want to go back empty-handed or without a promise of Gandhi coming with him, so he followed Gandhi everywhere. He followed Gandhi everywhere. He accompanied Gandhi to every meeting till ultimately Gandhi was so impressed by this man that Gandhi fixed a date with this man, and he went to Champaran. Now, when he went to Champaran, now this man, being a poor farmer, being an illiterate man, did not understand much of the situation himself. He could not explain to Gandhi very well of what was happening in Champaran. All he could say was that in Champaran they were suffering, these British landlords are ill-treating them. But then Gandhi, being a lawyer, he need to have more information about what was happening in Champaran. So, on his way to Champaran, he went first to Muzaffarpur in order to collect more solid and concrete information of what was happening in Champaran. And it was here that he met many prominent people, especially professors like Professor J.B. Kripalani, who went to meet Gandhi. He went and waited for Gandhi at the train station. Him along with his students, they went and meet and greeted Gandhi. Then again, Gandhi stayed there for some time, and he was given shelter by Professor Malkani. Now, if you look in your book, you would find that Gandhi praised Professor Malkani for giving Gandhi shelter and giving Gandhi refuge. The reason is because Professor Malkani was a government teacher. And being a government teacher, he was ready and willing to help a lawyer who's come all the way to Champaran to fight against the British government. So it was an extraordinary thing according to Gandhi. Now, anyway, we go back to Indigo. Now, why is this chapter called Indigo? What is this Indigo? Now, Indigo is actually a plant. Uh, it was used as it was one of the original sources of indigo dye or indigo coloring. Now, the primary use for indigo is as a coloring or as a dye for cotton yarn, which is mainly for the production of denim cloth for blue jeans. Now, some are also used for dyeing wool and silk. So it means that during that time, the sale of this plant indigo was on a very high. The market was very high for the sale of this particular plant, and they were selling this at a very expensive rate, at a very high rate. It was very expensive. So, and then at the same time, they were selling these indigo plants globally. Now, I use the word they. Who are these they here? Now you come back to Champaran. The they that I'm talking about here is the British landlords. Now, most of the land in Champaran was owned by the British landlords. And then again, we're talking about a place where the majority of the people depended on agriculture, they depended on farming. And then again, we're talking about a place where most, in fact, almost all of the farmers didn't have land of their own. And so they needed to depend on other people's land in order for them to grow plants. And this method of renting people's land is actually called sharecropping. Now, I told you already that Raj Kumar Shukla was a sharecropper. Now, what is this system of sharecropping? This system of sharecropping is when a person doesn't have his or her own land, and so they rent land from people who are willing to give their land for rent, and then they grow their vegetations there. And then again, according to this sharecropping system, there's also a kind of an agreement that goes on between the landlords and the sharecroppers or the farmers. And the agreement depends between the landlord and the sharecroppers. Sometimes it could be that whatever these people grow, they have to give 50% of it to the landowners. Sometimes it is 20%, and sometimes, in the case of indigo, in the case of Champaran, they had to give 15%. But then again, the landlords here, they did not want what the farmers were growing. They wanted the farmers to grow 15% of the land that they are taking, to grow 15%, to grow it with indigo, and to give the harvest of indigo as rent. Now, this was quite tiresome for the sharecroppers. There's a whole lot of details into this, but like I said, we are not in the comfort of our classroom, so we'll not go so deep into it. But let's just keep it short. This was tiresome for the farmers, and at the same time, it was also very expensive because they needed certain tools and certain fertilizers and certain manure for the growth of this plant indigo. So instead of getting time to grow their own vegetations, they had to spend more time growing indigo. And then ultimately, the farmers or the sharecroppers, they had to um, resort to loans from money lenders, or they had to resort to loans from the landowners themselves in order for them to be able to grow this plant. Now, anyway, uh, so they were growing this plant, but then again, like I said, this sharecropping system, there's always an agreement. So the agreement, like I said, they have to give 50, 20, or 15. But then what these landlords had done is that they said that they want only 15%. But to make it more solid, they made the farmers sign contract, and these are called long-term contracts, where the farmers would have to agree with all of the rules given to them by the landowners. And then when we say a long-term contract, it's usually for many years. It's usually 5 years and above. And so if you think of a farmer who is well off, it's 5 years is nothing. But we're talking about very poor farmers who did not even have enough money for their own clothing, for sending their children to school, or providing much for their family. These are farmers who are just earning by the day, and they were highly indebted, and it was very difficult for these farmers to follow. But many of them, they agreed with the agreements of this particular system of sharecropping in Champaran because of poverty, and also because they were bullied by the landowners, so they had to accept. So what happened was, ultimately, in the time being, as they were growing this plant indigo, and as they were losing much of their precious time, suddenly the landowners told them to stop growing this plant indigo. We said you can be free from this agreement of growing 15% of the land with indigo. You can grow the whole land, you can take the whole land and grow things with whatever you want to grow there. But in place of that 15% of harvest of the indigo, the farmers had to compensate to the landlords. And when we use the word compensate or compensation, it means that the farmers had to pay the landowners for not growing indigo. Again, for this, the landowners, what they did was they gave them another contract to sign. That is, this second contract is a kind of agreement for the farmers that you are free from the first contract, but in order to be free from the first contract, you have to give a compensation. Now, most of these farmers, in fact, all of the farmers, they found that this was unfair. Why should they give money why should they compensate? They did not understand. So they tried to hire lawyers, or they tried to fight against the landowners. So the landowners, what they did was they once again bullied these farmers because they're poor, they're illiterate, they didn't understand anything. So it was very easy to shun them down. So they hired thugs, they hired people who are ready and willing to beat people up, who are ready and willing to ill-treat people for the sake of money. And so this was the plight of the farmers of Champaran. And so Raj Kumar Shukla was one of those sharecroppers who was also under this long-term contract, and he wanted to be free. Now, these farmers had tried to hire lawyers within the Champaran district every now and then to fight for their freedom from the contracts. But the problem with the lawyers, now there's a whole other issue with the lawyers then. Now, the lawyers, being lawyers, they only thought of their own selfish needs. And it was very difficult for the Champaran peasants to find a good, selfless lawyer who's going to be willing to fight against the British government. And now, I already told you, it was very difficult to fight against the British, because it'd be like you are fighting against the British government when you are under the British government. So that was difficult. Now, the lawyers, they did take up the cases of these farmers, but it was just like a false promise, taking up the cases, but knowing that they cannot win. But they did take up the cases just so that they could earn money. And they charge high fees from these farmers. So you can imagine, like I already told you, that these farmers are very poor, they were already indebted, and now on top of that they have to hire lawyers, and the lawyers themselves are charging high fees. So you can imagine the plight of the farmers. Now, finally, we come back to this point where Gandhi comes to Champaran, but he does not go directly to this place. He first goes to Muzaffarpur to gain more information. And he was there, he was helped by these people like Professor J.P. Kripalani, then you have Professor Malkani. But the main intention of Gandhi was to go and meet Rajendra Prasad. Rajendra Prasad was also a lawyer who had taken up these cases of these Champaran farmers every now and then. But he was also one of those lawyers who understood that they could not do anything, because the farmers had signed the contract, whether they were forced or not. But once your signature is there, once your thumb imprint is there, it's quite difficult for the lawyers to fight against the British. Now, Rajendra Prasad was at that time a lawyer. Of course, ultimately, later on, he became the first president of India. He's a very prominent character here. Now, so after gaining much information, that he could, whichever much he could, however much he could collect from these people, Gandhi finally went to Champaran. And when he went there, the first thing that he did was he visited these two people, very important. First, he visited the General Secretary of the British Landlord Association to ask them about what's happening. Can you please give me information of what's happening with the landlords and the peasants? But then the British Landlord Association, they chased Gandhi away. They did not want to give any information to Gandhi. Then again, Gandhi did not give up. He next went to visit the commissioner of the Tirhut division. Now, this commissioner, being a British himself, he chased Gandhi out. He bullied Gandhi and he threatened Gandhi, telling Gandhi, you have to leave Champaran. Now, this is when Gandhi becomes even more curious. Why is it that these British are all sending me away? Why is it that they are threatening me to leave? So Gandhi does not leave. Gandhi then proceeds to go to Motihari. Motihari is the capital of Champaran. Now he wants to gather more information. There he was accompanied by many lawyers, many of his friendly lawyers, friends who were ready and willing to come and help Gandhi. So anyway, once there, he starts collecting information along with these lawyers. And it was a bit difficult because not all the farmers were ready and willing to speak against the British. So anyway, while he was there, he hears the news of a peasant who was ill-treated by one of the British landlords. And so Gandhi thought, okay, this is the best thing. I should go and meet this person so that Gandhi could gain information could even use this person as a witness. But on his way to meet this person, he was stopped. He was stopped by the police superintendent's messenger. This man stops Gandhi. He says, you cannot go any further. And then he escorts Gandhi back to Motihari. And then there he gives Gandhi a notice from the court that tells Gandhi that you have to leave Champaran. Gandhi takes notice and then he signs on the receipt that he has received the notice, but at the same time he disobeyed. He said, I'm not going to leave. Now this is what happens when you disobey the law. Now Gandhi received a notice from the court, which means that he received a notice or a kind of an order from the law. And Gandhi disobeyed the law. Now if you disobey the law, it means that you have committed crime. And once you commit crime, it means that you will be called to the law court to explain. And so, as a result of Gandhi disobeying the notice, Gandhi was summoned by the court because a case has been registered against Gandhi. Now, what happened was Gandhi was happy with this because it means that he will get a chance to, bring this issue of the people of Champaran in the court. So he was very happy. So he knew that the very next day he was supposed to go to the court. So all night, what he did was he did not sleep. He was busy preparing plans for his friend lawyers of what to do. And suppose Gandhi was taken to the court and if somehow the British were able to send Gandhi to prison for disobeying the law. So Gandhi was preparing plans for his friends to continue with the fight in Champaran. And in the meantime, Gandhi also telegrammed Rajendra Prasad. And he also told Rajendra Prasad to bring some more of his prominent lawyer friends to help the people of Champaran and to help Gandhi. Now these people came, but they came as advisors to Gandhi. Now before that, the very next day when Gandhi had to go to the court, when he reached the law court, Gandhi was surprised to see that there were so many people who had come to support Gandhi. And these people were all peasants, were all farmers, were all the local people of Champaran. Many of them didn't know about the greatness of Gandhi. Many of them just know Gandhi as a lawyer. And they were just so impressed by this outsider lawyer who was ready and willing to go to prison for their sake. And so they came to give their support for Gandhi. And there were so many of them that even the British officials could not control the crowd. And it took Gandhi, this one small man, it took this one man to stand there, and he told the crowd, please be quiet. And they all sat down. They sat down on the ground and they listened to Gandhi. When he said, keep quiet, they all kept quiet. Now, this was the first sign for Gandhi. The first sign was that impromptu, all of these people came. Nobody planned it. All of these people came as a support for Gandhi, but this is the first time that they notice that they can fight against the British only if we unite. And there were so many of them that the British officials themselves, they could not control the crowd. So that was the first sign for Gandhi. Then secondly, while he was there in the court, Gandhi stood up and he explained. He told the judge, he said, I'm guilty. He said, I'm guilty, yes, because I disobeyed the court, because I disobeyed the notice of the law. And then he said, but then again, he said that I have two reasons for this. He said, I did not break the law because I wanted respect from these people, but I broke the law because I could not help but listen to the plight of these people. And if I leave, nobody's going to help these people. So he says, if I get sent to prison, then let it be so. But I will not stop the fight until I win for these people in Champaran. Now, anyway, Gandhi was given a break, and the magistrate told Gandhi, we will call you again, because they could not control the crowd outside anymore. So they said, we will fix another date for this meeting in the court. In the meantime, Gandhi sat down with all of these lawyers who had come. And then these advisors, these lawyers who had come to advise Gandhi. And then as he was sitting there and as he was discussing with them, he asked them, what are you going to do if I get sent to prison? Now that was very easy for the lawyers. They said, hey, we've come here to help you. And if you're not going to be there, then we'll go back home. We'll go back to our normal lives. But Gandhi got very angry. He chided the lawyers here. Chided means he scolded the lawyers here for two reasons again. The first reason is for collecting high fees from the poor peasants. Being Indians, they were supposed to help each other, but they ended up becoming worse than the British. So Gandhi got very angry with that. And secondly, he chided the lawyers. He said that we are supposed to come and help each other, not help just friends. Now these lawyers